Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Nationwide Platforms webinar, the latest in our series covering some topics about powered access. I'm joined today by my colleague Matt Parfitt, who will be leading us through his MEWP Masterclass. So a lot of different things will be covered here, but if you have any questions by the time we get to the end, please just let us know, or if anything comes up as we're going along, pop it in the questions box, and we'll get to those when we can. You can see there that we've got a whole list of other webinars that are coming up in the future. But if there are any topics that you would like us to cover, maybe you can pop those in as a question in the questions box, as well as a suggestion for the future, and all those are much appreciated. And yes, so we'll be leading these through all the way up to the Working at Height event, which we are planning for 2022. More details of that will be available, I'm hoping, very, very soon. So Matt, the next slide. Matt, I think we're ready to go into the rest of the presentation. So
okay, all right, excellent. Can you hear me, Jordan? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Right, so good morning, everyone. So thanks, Jordan. So just to give you a bit of an agenda, obviously the masterclass is something which you may or may not have heard of, or may not have been, I say, subjected to, but you know, I might have delivered it to any one of your companies in the past. But last year, this is something which it kind of went from being a practical session, you know, classroom and out on a machine, to being more relevant for obvious reasons over Teams. Yeah, and as a result, that's something which the popularity and the audience I was able to take this to increased exponentially. Yeah, so we delivered this to well over 1,000 delegates during last year, and as a result, this is something which we've kept evolving, kept improving, because this is something which all of our customers, or anyone who's working at height within a platform, can benefit from. Right, so I'll give you an introduction first to what the masterclass is about. We then talk about MEWP selection, which is one of the most important parts of, you know, right tool for task. The main body of this is about the HSE document GIS6 and what that advises you as MEWP managers, supervisors, stakeholders you're expected to be considering when planning or using platforms to work at height. We do a piece on social distancing. I mean, maybe that's a thing of the past now, but there's definitely, depending on the company's policy, some considerations there that, you know, I can give you some pointers on. There is a piece on minimum standards. It's normally specific to the customer I'm delivering it to. So again, it'll be generic today, but again, if you want me to deliver this to your company, we can make this specific to your company's policy to peddle the message of X, Y, or Z contractor backing up the policies and the procedures and the best practice laid down by the overseeing body. So that's available. And then we finished off just talking about some innovations and attachments, and then any questions. So as Jordan says, there is a question board that you can put some questions on there through the presentation, and then Jordan will ask them to me at the end of it, and hopefully I'll have a chance of being able to give you a proper answer. If not, we'll come back to you afterwards. So the background to this is there was an incident up in the Northwest a few years ago now, whereby some machines, you know, reasonable heights, got entangled working at height. And it's fair to say, due to some failures in procedure and possible risks, the incident that happened, you know, turned from bad to worse, you know, and there was a lot of learnings to come from that, which is normally the case. Something has to happen to sometimes drive standards forward, but we were asked to get involved, to overlay some thoughts, some guidance, some best practice, and some process to try and reduce, if not eliminate, the chance of these things, this incident happening again. So the site, you know, that I'm referring to, mandated an enhanced form of secondary guarding after that incident, which is all about proximity sensing rather than waiting for a collision. It mandated the MEWP managers IPAF course for all of their supervisors on site. It also mandated basket-to-basket rescue for anyone using high-level platforms, you know, the 40-meter booms on site. So there was a fixed course everyone then had to go to practice basket-to-basket rescue, because that was foreseeable as something that might be needed. And then the final part I was asked to put together was a MEWP Masterclass, which basically was a toolbox talk, trying to bring everyone up to speed on what they're expected to be considering when planning, using, and managing platforms on site. And you can probably see the reason why we deliver this. You know, it clearly adds value as a specialist, as a you know, a supplier to our customers. You know, it's a great example of good service. Obviously, it's flexible to different mediums, and it allows you to be in compliance, if not ahead of the standard, because most of this is based on what the industry is saying. I'm just the vehicle for that, really. So who's benefited from this? You can see some big names on there, and I'm sure there's some names already on the list here. I've already seen who's actually on the talk today. But we've delivered this across the board with a number of people, like I said, well over 1,000 just last year on Teams, including many IOSH groups across the country, across the globe, to be honest. We've done it for the Caribbean, Singapore, and Oman. Fortunately, I didn't get to go to any of these places, but done them remotely via Teams. And they all got to benefit, because the message is absolutely as relevant, whether it's in the UK based on a UK standard to whether it's somewhere else, because it's just about working safer at height. It's not something which is necessarily only specific to those working at height in the UK. And the why we do this isn't just about what we think is best practice. We know something else needs to be done, because there's plenty of information out there that points towards certain risks not being taken not being considered as much as they should have done. You've got there falls from height, you've got overturn, trapping, collapse has been a huge contributor towards the work at height fatalities just up to 2013 from this document RR961. Yeah, and this gave us the initial impetus to change things in the market. Once we knew there was some raw data out there that evidenced why we needed to do something differently, that sort of moved the industry on. Yeah, you take things forward, you wind it forward to this IPAF Global MEWP Safety Report, which was released a couple of years ago. Yeah, and that went from 2016 through to 2018. So 2 years worth of data, 2.5 years worth of data. You can see there the issues and the fatalities were very similar. Yeah, RR961 covered a larger spectrum of time, but this document here, I think, brought the stats up to date, and they probably drew on a richer source of data from more members, from more countries, with people offering up more information where an incident has happened, because that's been the inhibitor previously. You know, people have to share it so we can evidence and do something about it. Yeah, and then we move forward even further, and only really in the last month we've had a further IPAF report on the global MEWP statistics, which includes fatalities, which went up to the 31st of December 2020. So this is an annual report, and that will be annual now every year. And again,
Matt, I did to interrupt you when you're in full flow there, but I'm just being notified we can still only see your first slide, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'll have to.
Live webinars. I do apologise,
everyone. I'll try and.
There we are. Sorry about that, everyone.
Is it actually showing the? Is it moving between the slide decks?
It is now. It is now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's why we have you there, Jordan. Thanks, mate. 'Cause otherwise, I would not have known that.
That's all right. Thanks, everyone.
Anyway, so yeah, thanks for the feedback, guys. Right, so obviously this is the final part as to why we do this. Yeah, so you can see the IPAF, the most up-to-date global IPAF statistics, which again have drawn from an even wider source of information, more countries, more contributors, and unfortunately more accidents. But it just gives us a better idea of where the issues are. Now, you've still got entrapment there, you've still got overturn, you've still got falls from height. But what you can see now in terms of the fatality rates is actually electrocution is the biggest killer now. And I don't think that, and it may or may not be because electrocution in the last year has suddenly become more prevalent. I think we've just got access to more information, but either way, you can see where the primary 4 main areas we all need to look at and take more seriously, because as a result, you can see there the amount of fatalities that has caused, this has caused over the last 12 months within our, IPAF's global membership. So again, if anyone wants access to this information, drop it on the message group, and then Jordan will send that and distribute it to the wider user group afterwards. So this is the why we do it, and obviously there's a bunch of legislation behind that, which, I say evidence is why, if the stats aren't enough, if there's a bunch of laws and legislations out there which says you need to be doing things differently, and you know what, there's guidance notes out there as well, which are what I take you through today, called GIS 6, and you've got RR 960, RR 961. They all say that things need to be done differently because of what we know in terms of incidents and accidents. So that's the reason why we do it. Yeah. The next section here, because there's an issue, we've given some evidence to that, is how do we make better decisions when selecting the right tool for tasks? Now, the easiest way to reduce risk is to not work at height. Doesn't particularly suit my business, but whenever you're assessing a task, can you avoid working from height? Everyone's MEWP policy or work at height policy will start with that sentence, I can pretty much guarantee you. So if you can't avoid working from height, you then need to use your own access decision tree, whatever method that might be, where you've got scaffold, rope access, system, alley towers, things like that, and mechanical access. But when it comes to mechanical or MEWPs, that's where we come in as an expert to hopefully give you the best advice and supporting information to make the best decision on the right platform for the job. And you can see there across our fleet, we've got 13,500 platforms across 350 different variants. So you do need to know your onions about these platforms here to get the right choice. And that's where we come in. You have to use the expert, whoever your supplier is, hopefully nationwide, but whoever your supplier is, use the expertise at hand to be able to help you. Because platforms do change on a yearly basis. We've just taken in a bunch of JLG platforms this year that have got technology on them that we've never had access to before. So it's our job now to promote that out to the market, well, to our staff to begin with, and then out to our customer base. So again, there are solutions that we've had in the last 2 months that we didn't have, that the market didn't have prior to that. So again, it's using your supplier, using the expertise to allow the right tool, the most innovative, safest, most productive tool to be used. And there's just a few examples on here. I'm up in Warrington today delivering some Titan Boom product awareness sessions. I mean, it's a great platform that we have in our fleet that pretty much no one else has, that can allow you to do the job of a diesel scissor with the space and the safe working load, but off the front end of a telescopic boom. Nothing else will work in that configuration. We've also got platforms or cherry pickers that have come into the fleet over the last year that now almost have double the safe working load than they previously do. The baskets are still, relatively speaking, the same size, but they can now lift more. If you look down the middle, you've got specialized truck mount solutions. You've got the 48-meter power finger. That's got 200-degree jib rotation in each direction, which means effectively you can go up and over a building and turn it round and face the building you've just gone over. Again, there's pretty much not many other platforms that can do that. And then on the right hand side there, you've got a few variations there in our green fleet. The sustainability is obviously a big thing, and our policy now is where they're available, we will only be buying green fleet, whether that's electric, hybrid, biofuel, or where they're not available, we'll be buying the tier 5, the stage 5 engines to be as emission friendly as possible. But again, talk to your supplier, because there might be a rough terrain electric scissor lift that you'd normally have gone to a diesel before, because you never realized there was an electric version. Or for example, with the HR28s there, you've now got a 28-meter articulating boom, which, to be fair, has been in the market for a few years now, but prior to maybe 5 years ago, you couldn't work off a biofuel boom at 28 meters. It had to be a diesel. So these things move on, and you need to stay close to your supplier to be able to to select the right and the most relevant, most emission friendly platform at hand. And just again, just focusing a bit here on some new products. You may have heard me talk about this before, but we've just recently brought in these new low-level access platforms into the fleet. They're called the Bravi Leonardo. They're a 4.9 meter self-propelled platform, double extending decks, very versatile, very robust. Yeah, they take the pain that a construction site will hand out, and they keep going. And we've invested heavily in them this year. But if you look to the right-hand side, as well as being a very productive, very versatile platform on their own at 4.9 meters, we've actually got the solo gyp solution that comes with that now, which if you're in interiors, a fit out, a contractor, an interiors, whatever you want to call it, where you're putting up plasterboard at height, we've got a solution there that will allow that to be done double the quantity to traditional means with one person instead of two, and done a hell of a lot safer, because you're not having to manually handle any of these materials, because you place the plasterboard on the attachment at ground level, and with the touch of a button, it travels up the side of the platform, then turns through to horizontal as the image shows. So the operator can then just screw in with the help of the rollers on the attachment to position it, and away he goes to the next job. So again, these things are in the fleet now, they're available. We just need engagement. So at least you guys are aware of it and can make best use of it. And then the final part about MEWP selection is, I've talked about a lot about some new solutions, stuff that's changing, stuff that's evolving. Well, how do you gain access to that? Well, obviously I work for Nationwide, so I'm going to tell you how you do that within our fleet. Well, you've got product guides on the left. You can invite us to site to do a site survey. You can go on the website, punch in some information, and it'll advise you on a machine. Or if you're a novice to platforms, completely, you can go on the website again, and there's some videos in there which gives you a basic introduction to different platform types like track booms, low level access, or cherry pickers. Yeah. Or if you're a customer of ours and you've got an intranet, we can upload product specifications and information to whatever standard you would wish to be another form of materials being on hand for your people to select that right machine for the task. So anyway, that's about MEWP selection. The next part of this, and this is probably after talk really, is just about the HSE document called GEIS 6. Yeah, it's a general information sheet produced by the HSE, which goes into really a lot of detail around the selection, management and use of mobile elevating work platforms. Yeah, this used to be just for the construction industry, but now it's been updated and is relevant to anyone now that works at height within a MEWP. So I'll take you through each section of that very briefly. I'll overlay some examples that I've come across, which either validates why you need to do things a certain way, or it shows some examples of best practice or bad practice, just to sort of bring it to life a little bit. But the first section on this HSE document kind of is like our second section at the start. It's about the selection of the right tool, but it's understanding the job, the risks at hand, and as a result, what sort of restrictions are you going to be faced with that platform, which determine the one you need, whether it's the job you need to do, the height you need to go to, what restrictions, whether that be width, height, weight, terrain. Are there any overhead crush risks, and are there materials to be carried? Because if you look on the right hand side there, that's an example of what you shouldn't be doing. Yeah, if you walk on site and you see anyone one climbing over the handrails like that, but also loading the handrails with materials, they need to be brought down to a stop, because that's not the way you carry materials in a platform. Those handrails are not load bearing. They are there to keep people in the platform, and this document, as you'll see in later sections, very much makes it clear what is or isn't acceptable. Yeah, and remember, this is an HSE document. This isn't a MAP PAFIT standard. This is just me relaying the message from the HSE. But there's stuff we can do to help you with this very easily. We just need to have a conversation. The next part of this within GIS 6 is about logistics, or delivery and collection. So it makes a point of saying, do you know what time of day is relevant for the delivery or collection you're expecting? Is there appropriate lighting, space for the wagon to move? Is there a need for a banksman? Is there a logistics system? For some of public highway, is there a need for traffic management? And importantly, is the ground on your loading bay, or wherever you deem to be offloading, is it suitable for the machine you're after, but the other 5 machines which are on the back of the trailer and the wagon, it's a significant weight. And then also, the size, the space you're going to need. If you're going to be delivering a Z135 onto site, which is one of our biggest articulating booms, that comes on its own. There's no other platform on the wagon apart from that. But you effectively need double the length of that machine to offload it safely. So again, these are just things that the document asks you to think about, which I'm just giving you some examples of how you may be, how it may sort of come into play for you. The next part is about positioning before or during work. Yeah, so this is about, you've selected your machine as we have on the previous slide. We know the logistics. This is once it's on site and its movement before, during, and then at the point of off hire. So you need to have a serious look about the machine and its suitability, not just for where you're working, but how it's going to get to the job. If you look at that picture on the right-hand side there, some choice tool has decided to put an electric machine or a biofuel machine in the sand, and it's got stuck. Now, that might have been perfectly relevant for where it was going to be working. It might have been inside on a nice, slab of concrete, not a problem. But they'd not considered the route the machine was going to go on. That might have needed some plating, perhaps. It might have needed an alternative route, or it might have needed an alternative machine. Yeah. So again, this can cost you a lot of money in fees, in lost time, and you know what? It could cost you also in safety, because if you look at RR961, there's 82 fatalities due to overturn. There's nothing to say that that machine couldn't have fallen foul of an overturn if it goes onto a terrain which it's not suitable for. So again, this is really important, and it ties back to the evidence which I've already raised at the beginning. Other things to think about is the obstructions the machine en route might have to pass under, pass over, pass around, because they can very easily cause entrapment risks or collisions. Also, the risk of pedestrian collisions, perhaps through changes in segregation, control measures, temporary works, things like that. So how does that impact on the route the machine is going to take and the safety tied to that? And then obviously visibility and other areas like that. The next section there is about falls from height. And as you can see from RR961 and from the IPAF Global report up to 2019, and the one that was released very recently up to the end of 2020, falls from height is either the largest or the second largest killer. So it's something which we all need to be very acutely aware of. Now, this document here, GIS6, points towards 6 different areas which can contribute or accelerate the chance of a fall from height. And one of those, if you've driven a boom before, this will be very familiar to you. If you drive the machine in a boom with anything tellied out, you're going to get more bounce, more sway. And as a result, if you're not clipped on and you get a certain amount of bounce because the machine is tellied out, then that person could easily get bounced out of the basket. Yeah, and that's where you've immediately got a chance of risk of falling. You've also got the other side of that coin, which is catapult. So if you were to drive off a curb or the gradient was to change drastically, you wouldn't just get a sway, you would get a literal inertia, violent bounce. And again, if you're not clipped in, you could fall over or fall out. But if you are clipped in and the lanyard length isn't appropriate to only getting over the kick plate and no more, you could get propelled into something above you. So again, this is perfectly avoidable. Yeah, and if you listen to the IPAF standards when you do your course, you need to operate, you need to drive the machine stowed to the point where you're going to then go through the motion of your different sequences to work at height. You can drive the machine at full height, but the guidance is out there that says that ideally you should position under your work before you go anywhere at height, just to reduce the risk of boom bounce and catapult and things like that. You've also got the risk of falls through operators overreaching and or standing on the handrails, which you can see from that top right hand image up there. Yeah, we all know that's happened before and probably still happens, but that will significantly increase the chances of someone falling or dangling from height, as you can see from the image below it. Yeah, so the way you avoid that is 1, by clipping on, and 2, by having a lanyard length which is appropriate, i.e. it doesn't let you climb any higher than the kick plate. means you can't fall out, you can't climb anywhere to increase your chances of a fall. The other two are more about other things coming into play with the machine rather than the operator doing something specific. So this is about impact at the ground level from other vehicles. Yeah, so you imagine a telehandler, another MEWP, a crane, a bus, whatever it is. If that collides with a machine that hasn't been appropriately excluded in terms of its zoning, then that is going to absolutely propel the operator in the direction they don't want to go in. So that's a serious one if you don't plan your exclusion zones. Then you've also got the risk of snagging causing falls from height. Now that is the whole reason this masterclass was put together, because of that job whereby there are two machines pirouetting, or whatever you want to call it. They're working in close proximity to each other. And the story with this one goes that that because of the close proximity, the operator was probably a bit too close to the steel, trying to maneuver around the other platform, got stuck on the steel, couldn't then get himself out of it. He shouted down for someone to operate the ground controls. That person came along with no training, no familiarization. They pushed the platform even further into the steel. So if it wasn't stuck before, it definitely was now. And then the steel erectors afterwards, trying to resolve the scenario, removed the steel, which of course, because of the pent up energy, then swung the platform the other way. And that could have easily been an overturn. That could have easily been a fall from height. Thankfully, it wasn't. But that's why we put this talk together, to try and raise some standard, raise awareness of risks, and how we can you can improve things that you mitigate for them, you reduce them, if not avoid them. And this document just very clearly says if there's a risk from falls from height, which is basically whenever you get into the platform, you need to be clipped on. Yeah. Now there's always questions about clipping on scissor lifts, which from an IPAF point of view, I'm pretty sure the latest update on that says they're not recommended on scissor lifts, but depending on the job you're doing, you would risk assess it and make the appropriate decision. I think contractors who do have clip-on policies on scissor lifts, the most sensible one I've seen is where they mandate you have to be clipped on when you're driving, when you're elevating, or when you're descending, because you're not going to be going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to be walking anywhere at that point, but you are going to be at risk of sway on a scissor lift through driving or movement. So if you're clipped on and you're not walking anywhere, then effectively you can still use that machine safely, but be safer from a fall through being clipped on. But once you're static at height to do your job, you then unclip as per that policy, particularly to allow you to get on and use the platform size and dimensions. But ultimately, this is your choice. But there is a risk, obviously, in all platforms when you work at height, because when you're in the air, that risk will never go away. So next thing we've got on here is about trapping and crushing. So you've seen from the evidence I've given you at the start, it's either the third or the fourth biggest killer in every report we've seen. You got 47 up to 2013, and I think there was another 18 or 17 up to 2019, and there'll be another dozen or so in the last year in the most up-to-date report. So you're probably looking over 100 of these entrapment fatalities now, or close to. Yeah, and an entrapment fatality or an entrapment incident really is where, normally in a boom, but it can be in a scissor lift. But if I just use the boom example, the operator is on the joystick, foot on the pedal, they're elevating the machine, they've not seen something behind them, it suddenly pushes on the back of their head or on the back of their shoulder, so pressure's on the elbow, your hands on the joystick, and suddenly the machine is forced to operate in the direction that the pressure above you is pushing it. So as a result, that will further crush you, and with 4 to 6 minutes before asphyxiation takes place, and to be fair, half a ton of pressure in half a second, you can guess why there are fatalities in this particular area. And this is about proper observation, as the main avoidance tactics here for the reduction of this risk. Yeah, clearly familiarization is important, because you might get the controls wrong, but also familiarity with how that machine works differently to others in terms of its sensitivity. Also, you got behavioral elements there about actually looking where you're going. It sounds an obvious one, but I see so many examples, even on low-level access platforms, where some people are driving them stowed, but they've got their heads over the handrails looking at the wheels as opposed to the obstructions which are above them. So the risk to me of entrapment is at 2 meters as much as it is at 42 meters. But again, proper operation and awareness of this risk, and this sort of behavioural element is probably the biggest way you can reduce the risk of entrapment. Yes, you can use technological solutions, and we've got plenty of those to show you, but that is the other half of the coin. That's the second part of the story. First part is about behavioural solutions, doing things better, being more vigilant about your awareness, and making sure that you're appropriately trained and familiarized on the platform before you go up in it. But the document here talks about technological solutions or secondary guarding, and I'll give you some examples about that later. The market's moved on, to be fair, since this document came out. We've now got intelligent secondary guarding or proximity sensing solutions, which can stop an incident happening before you get anywhere near the obstruction now. And for me, that's the optimum standard, because if you can stop prior to anything happening, you can then reposition and get on with doing your job safely, rather than being pinned or having to collide with something which you then have to react from and try and remove and retract and get out of that situation you've placed yourself in. So anyway, entrapment's a big thing, one which I've had a lot of involvement in over the years, and again, if people want more information on that, I'll be happy to provide it. The next section is about dropped objects. Now, this isn't actually in GIS 6 because of when it was produced, 3 or 4 years ago. But if it was made in the last year or two, I'm sure it would be in there now. If you walk on any construction site, you're going to see a stop the drop poster, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and to be fair, it's referred to within the work at height regs. Yeah, and if you can't avoid the risk of a fall, you need to mitigate for that in some way, whether that's an exclusion zone, tool tethers, or netting, which we can show you later. But the bit I use here in terms of these images, they just brings a bit more context to the risk to the operators perhaps out there. A phone at the height of a Genie 45 or 15 meters becomes more of a suitcase by the time it hits the ground, and a bolt which is slightly heavier at the height of a Genie 60 or Z62, 23 meters in the air, becomes more of a washing machine in terms of its cumulative weight by the time it hits the deck. Now, I don't know about anyone on this call here, but a washing machine landing on my head is probably going to kill me, if not break something, and a suitcase the same. So hopefully this gets across the importance of having the tethering solutions, the netting, the exclusion zones, to try and reduce that risk if something were to fall, that someone's not on the sharp end of that. Okay. So again, I follow the format of GIS 6 here. Yeah. So the next section in GIS 6 is about handling materials in platforms. Now, thankfully for Nationwide, the image they use in that document is one of our Skyrack solutions, because this has been around in the market a long while, and it is a great example of what best practice looks like. But let me wind that back for a second, because a lot of people don't know that you can use platforms to carry materials at height, which you can. Just like you can with a crane, a telehandler, a forklift, or a side loader. You just need to select the appropriate tool for the task that you're trying to achieve. Yeah. So once you've made that decision, and you know the weight and the dimension and the load distribution of those sprinkler pipes, those cladding panels, you then need to select the right machine which can carry the weight of your materials, the attachment, the people, and the tools, and then fit the appropriate material handling attachment, as we can see in any of these images on the right hand side here, to make that activity safe. Now, those attachments that we can offer that have been visually displayed on this slide deck here really do 3 things. Well, if you include compliance to this standard, 4 things perhaps, but anyway, they secure the load through transit, they take weight off the handrail, so like I said to you earlier, they're not load bearing, and importantly from an operator's perspective, it allows them to get on with driving the machine safely and concentrating on what they're doing, rather than having to split the concentration on something they're holding, or having to stick their feet on to stop rolling around. Yeah, so this safely stores the materials, you don't have to worry about it, to then get on with operating carefully, which means you might then be a bit more vigilant of entrapment risks or falls or something else. Yeah, it's a no-brainer to me, but people have to be aware they can do it in the first place, and once they're aware they can do it, how do you do it safely? And it very much is through the use of these material handling attachments, which you can see a few examples of here. Okay, the next section of GIS 6 is about exiting the platform at height, which whilst MEWPs are not designed for transferring people from one level to another, absolutely. You can leave the basket at height, yeah, but only once you've done a rigorous risk assessment and method statement to justify, firstly, why you're doing it, yeah, you know, and there are some examples, but why you're doing it, and two, how you're going to reduce that risk of exiting the basket at height. So double lanyard, edge protection, something like that. And really, my personal view on this is, you know, whilst the document here says that it can be done, in my view, it's by exception. Yeah, you shouldn't make this the norm, really, but you can do it by exception. And what's an exceptional circumstance? Well, I've already given you one earlier in the session. You know, after there was that incident up in the north, they dictated that all MEWP operators at 40 meters needed to do the basket-to-basket rescue training. Well, of course, to do a basket-to-basket rescue training, you need to leave the basket at height. So that's an exceptional circumstance because it's a valid rescue method, which is safety critical. Yeah. Now, I'm sure there are other exceptional circumstances, but I'll leave that for you guys to decide what is or isn't. But if you want to find out more information, then obviously we can send on the IPAF guidance in respect to that. Right, so 2 more sections relevant to GIS6, and these ones are perhaps a bit more familiar to you. You know, pre-use checks is something we ask all of our MEWP customers, our hiring customers, to do prior to use, to make sure they're safe and you know, and ready for use prior to going up in the air. Yeah, because if something's wrong, you don't want to find that out when you're at 15 meters in the sky. You want to have tested that machine, pre-use checked it prior to going anywhere. And if there is a fault, you then isolate your tag, you report it, and you don't use it until that problem has been fixed. And that includes thorough examination. You know, that's the first part of the check. And if that's not there, then you don't do any other parts of the checks. You just isolate, tag, your report until you get that thorough examination. Because if you don't do this, you know, this pre-use check, I don't know. You see there's 38 collapse, failure fatalities that could easily be avoided, or it possibly could be avoided through a pre-use check. I don't know. Maybe one of those 38 fatalities, maybe 2 of them, which I think that's good enough reason alone to do a pre-use check. If on that one time out of 99 that picks up something that you would have just cracked on and done, and there was an outrigger issue, I don't know, whatever it might be, that caused you a problem at height. So anyway, pre-use checks are important, as is training certification, as I've already said. You know, obviously it needs to be appropriate for the machine you're working on. It's also important that, you know, the other people involved in the management and use of MEWPs are also trained. So like I said, on that site where we had this incident, they have MEWPs and managers training for all of their supervisors. You know, if you're handing platforms over to others on site because you're a MEWP manager as such, there's evidence to say really you should be doing the IPAF demonstrator course, which I've got, all of our drivers have got, which trains you on how to hand over platforms to others. So again, depending on your activities and your interaction with MEWPs, there will be some training that we would strongly advise you're involved in, because work at height regs talk about the demonstration of competence, and this is one way that we can assist you in that effort. You know, which includes familiarization, which I said, you know, can be supported with additional courses, but the fact that you're doing a familiarization, or that you've got a policy which says that you should have that done prior to use, i.e. someone is familiarized, is very important. And there are ways that we can support, not just with courses. We can do these QR code downloads, which give you some support on emergency descent. We've got some videos on familiarization, but you've also got the manual, which also takes you through the operations of that particular platform. As long as you do it, that's the main thing. There are various ways you can do it, and obviously we can support you in that. And beyond that, there's plenty of other guidance out there which supports this document here, which, to be fair, contributed to this document as well, or there are things which have come as a result of it. And if you want, I can send on any of these documents which are referred to here. Right, the bit that hopefully is becoming a thing of the past, maybe, touch wood, is the social distancing when it comes to use of platforms, specifically with the 1 or 2 meter rule. So on the left-hand side here, you've got platforms which you don't have to worry about so much because they're one person platforms. So again, you know, you've got one person in, you don't have to separate. You've got the picker down the middle there, which do typically take 2 people in the basket because of the jobs they're used for. But in most of the platforms, apart from the Titan, you can't crudely stand 2 meters apart. So you need to consider how you're going to overcome that. It might be 2 platforms, it might be you've got additional PPE, back-to-back working, whatever it is. Again, it's something you need to think about. And then on the right-hand side there, you see the 2 scissors and the truck mount. Well, they do typically have, crudely speaking, 2 meters space that you can stand apart from each other and be compliant to the rules. But if you look to the top right, within the truck mounts only, we do, well, as of probably almost a year ago now, we've developed a shielding solution that we can put in the truck mounts only, which is a 1 meter sheet of perspex, manufacturer approved and everything else, which we can fit to the trucks above, I think, 26 meters, which can provide a physical barrier between person 1 and person 2 in the platform to avoid the need to stand 2 meters apart. So there's always a solution. There's always something we can do. Not quite available yet on the booms, and whether it will actually get to that point is quite another thing, but we do have it on the truck mounts. Right, so the next part of this is in this, because this is a generic presentation, it's not customer specific. This is where we would go through the customer's standard. Now, you've got BAM standard on there that we've done a few sessions on before, but if you want us to do this, whether it's Mr. Morgan Sindel, Mr. Balfours, Mr. Langerock, whoever it might be, we can do this presentation to your user groups, but also tack on the end your work at height policy, which states certain things about what you expect from your operators, which, touch wood, and very much 99% of the time, they back up what GIS 6 has already said. So it kind of, one corroborates the other. Yeah. And this is what we can help with if you'd like us to. There's a few examples there about other company standards that we've supported the development of through our own QC experts. This isn't me helping to write the policy. This is using our safety experts to give you some guidance and support and some feedback on how your policy for working at height, specifically within MEWPs, can be enhanced, and some of the wording perhaps you could consider to use, which would improve your procedures and policies. So anyway, that option is there, that service is there if you'd like us to provide it. And then finally, and all these things are referred to within GIS 6, in terms of risks. So we've got a bunch of solutions here within our innovation range. When it comes to material handling, we've got probably the largest range, if not 100% the largest range to any other provider in the world. Yeah, and you can see there 7 different versions, but there is more. So top left, we've got the Skyrack for electric scissors. Bottom left, you've got the Skyrack Plus for the diesel scissors, and then you've got the 2 boom racks in the middle for standard pipes or for edge protection. You've got your plasterboard solutions, the ones in orange, top and bottom, and the one on the bottom there in the circle is the powered solution I talked about. And then top right, you've got an antennae material lifting solutions for our truck mount. So again, they're solutions for all sorts of different trades who will all have to carry some sort of material which we can support with the safe maneuvering of. And then the last slide really is just about some of the other solutions we've got. So entrapment, like I said, is either the 3rd or the 4th biggest killer out there, and it has been for many years. Well, we've got proximity sensing solutions on the booms, which we've had for 2 or 3 years now, which we can provide on any of our platforms as long as the customer agrees with it. So that stops someone from getting entrapped either 0.5 meter or 1.8 meter away from the platform, depending on the sensor that's gone off. And then they make a decision at that point whether they want to move closer to the risk because they need to change a light bulb, or they've not seen the steel beam, which is just behind them. It stops them prior to impact. They then reposition and get on with doing the job safely. Yeah. So it's not something which stops the use of the platform. It's a warning system which makes them think prior to moving closer to a high risk item. On the right, you've also got our dropped object solutions there. So you've got the net, which is probably speaks for itself really. It wraps around the boom. It velcros at the top and magnetizes at the bottom, and anything 15 mil or bigger will not fall through that net and become, like I said, a washing machine by the time it falls 23 meters, which is fire retardant and again available on the 6-foot and 8-foot genie baskets. We've also got a tether bag which we can fix to the platform, which again allows you to always have a tether position for the machine, whether it's tethered to the person or to the bag. There's no point of disconnection, which we've had on many sites now, particularly on some of the HS2 sites recently. They've adopted that as almost as a minimum standard. And then bottom left, we've got our Sky Sentry telematics solution, which, to put it quite simply, is an immobilizer which stops anyone from using a platform up until the point they've got a pre-authorized card or pre-authorized, PIN code, which then activates the machine. It can also give you a lot of MI data as well, use, who, when, why, bad practice it can pick up on, but essentially it's about the prevention of unauthorized use. And then bottom right, you've got some of the things which are coming down the track, which will be available soon. So the proximity sensing solution for booms will hit scissor lifts by the time we get to the latter part of this year. We've also got a product which is that seatbelt down the bottom right there called Harness On, and that's a product which, once fitted to the machine and the operator's harness, once the operator clips onto the machine via this this Harness On solution, it then activates the machine for use, and until the person is clipped on, that machine will not activate, whether you pull the e-stop out, turn the engine on, or whatever. As long as that seat belt hasn't seen a connection, the machine won't go anywhere. Which, when you think about where falls can happen, it's where you've got someone elevating, descending, or driving at height. Well, no one's going to be driving, elevating, or descending with this solution fitted without being clipped on, because the machine will not operate without it being clipped on. Yeah, so you can see how the reduction of a fall from height risk with the use of this solution is almost a no-brainer. But that's available back end of the year as well. And there's plenty of other specials and modifications we can do, whether it's narrowing the baskets, whether it's fixing a height the machine can't go beyond, fixing a slew range the machines can't rotate beyond. There's plenty of things we can do. But yeah, we don't have time to go through all that today, but the capability is definitely there. And that, my friends, is the end of the webinar. Jordan, did you want to pop back on, mate? Is there any questions?
Yes, I've had some great questions actually. So let's have those. And if anyone wants to add any, just please let us know. The first was just a kind of a general thing, but saying with what a great concept. How did you develop the masterclass, and was it just one person's idea, or was it something that came out just as a general business requirement?
Yeah, so I guess I don't know whether I made this a clear enough point at the start. It was following an incident on a site in the Northwest 6-7 years ago, which I had some close contacts with some of the contractors on site involved in this incident, as well as the principal contractor, and our name was put forward as a specialist, as someone who can advise on what to do as a standard to avoid this from happening again, or to reduce the chance of this risk happening. So yes, it's came about as a result of an incident happening. Thankfully, it wasn't a fatality, but as a result, it's created a standard which they used absolutely to high volumes, but also it's allowed me to deliver this to thousands of other people since then. So yeah, so it's a great example of collaboration can raise awareness of best practice outside of just a single site. So yeah, it's all good.
Excellent. Okay. Question here about technology in general. So do you believe the move towards more technology-led safety protection is likely to develop a false security that there's no longer a risk when operating machines?
Okay, so if you take the example of entrapment, that's why I labour the point that the behavioural solution to this is of equal, if not slightly larger importance than having a technological answer. That's why familiarization, that's why handovers, that's why the right training courses, the appropriate selection of the right tool for task is something I've gone on and on and on about. As opposed to just saying, look, I've got a wonderful range of technology here. This is going to keep you absolutely safe, and nothing else bad will happen to you. It's the combination of both which is going to save lives, not one in isolation. And that it's a very good point to make, and one which hopefully I've got across in the presentation. This isn't just about technological solutions. That's one half of the coin. The behavioural part to this, the understanding is of equal, if not larger importance. And that's why the delivery of this toolbox talk is available to anyone on any site around the country, whether it's remotely or face-to-face, hopefully in the next few months. So we're happy to peddle this message for you as much as you wish to, if you think it's of relevance from a behavioural point of view to your MEWP stakeholders.
Yeah, that's true. There's an awful lot of training and extra things that we're doing around this, aren't there? So it's not just about technology.
No.
So a question here about the green aspect of the machines, and I think you perhaps addressed it a little bit, but with the world looking for means to protect the planet, how long do you think it will be before we see low carbon footprint machines in the marketplace, electric or hydrogen fuel cell? But I'm pretty sure that we're actually already making quite a lot of progress towards electrifying a lot of the nationwide platforms fleet, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think it's our ambition within 10 years. I think that's less than that, to only be buying electric fleet. But you know that because there's a lot of other sort of points in the chain here, i.e. the manufacturer and the industry supporting the battery technology to power those large machines. There's a lot that's going to have to happen for everything to be totally green. Yeah, but where they're available, we will be buying them, and we will be lobbying wherever we can do to try and increase the range of electrified machines. But like I said, you know, we've had the 28-meter booms come in the market now. We've had the rough terrain electric scissors, and next year I'm sure there'll be more, and the year after there'll be more. So yeah, it's something which will continue to be a trend which we will be at the forefront of investing in. So it's hard to say when they'll all be electric, you know, because it's in the hands of the manufacturer. But we're pushing as hard as we can do to accelerate that as quick as possible.
Okay, and the last question that we've got, which is again something that you did hint on in the presentation, but what safety developments are nationwide platforms working on presently, and how long before they're in the marketplace?
Well, the harness seatbelt, the seatbelt for MEWPs, I think that's what the strapline is. It's called harness on. Will be available latter part of the year, and we've already had I think 3 of our customers, if not 2, stipulate they want to mandate that solution on all of their platforms as soon as it's available. So that, if anyone wants more information on, we can engage with you immediately on, because we want to create demand for that as soon as it hits the fleet. And that's to me, that's probably the most no-brainer of a solution I've ever seen, because as soon as you step in a platform, you're at risk of a fall. And if you can reduce the chance of risks through having a system that doesn't allow someone to operate the machine, which they're not clipped onto, then that's a really effective way to reduce that risk. What else have we got coming? There's also pedestrian sensing solutions, you know, collision sensing solutions at the base of the platform. You know, overhead proximity sensors for scissors, and various other things in development. Which, if you want us to do a session on that to your user groups, your safety team, just let us know, and we'll come and do some talks on that. Not a problem.
Great. Well, that was the last question that we have. I don't know if we want to really briefly just mention the other webinar that's planned for this week, because I know it's we did mention the machines that it's going to be focusing on a little earlier, didn't we?
Yeah. So this Friday we're doing a sort of an interior sector focused webinar on working at low levels, but more sort of best practice for the interior sector, and it does focus a bit more heavily on that solo chip solution for installing overhead ceiling panels, as well as accessing through narrow ceiling voids. So if you're in the interior sector, or you're a main contractor who has the responsibility for interiors contractors, that session, it'll only be sort of 25-30 minutes on Friday at 11 AM. It's definitely worth joining, because there's some ways we can help you specifically with that sector through the use of best practice and innovation.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much then, Matt, for the excellent presentation.
No problem.
And answering those questions. Thank you to all the attendees as well. We'll be sending out the recording of this as a video link for you all. And yes, if you have any more questions or things that come to mind, you can let us know in email, and that will be, the details of that will be made available to you shortly as well. So yeah, thank you very much for attending, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
Bye.